Let's take a journey through history with a new video. On April 26, 1986, the explosion that occurred in Reactor No. 4 of the Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant and the environmental disaster that followed became one of the greatest tragedies in recent history. The massive amount of nuclear leakage caused serious concerns for public health in the region and neighboring countries. It was claimed that radioactive material equivalent to 400 times the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima had been released into the atmosphere. An area of 155,000 square kilometers was affected, and 52,000 square kilometers of farmland became unusable for decades. In addition, the spread of nuclear fallout in Soviet Russia and even in Turkey's Black Sea region revealed an increased risk of cancer. Even though at that time some of our country's so-called exceptional leaders made light of the situation by saying things like, "Radiation doesn't affect us," or "Drinking a little bit of radioactive tea won't hurt, it even tastes better," there was, in fact, a disaster with devastating consequences. However, behind this globally known and widely reported Chernobyl event lies the story of three men who risked their lives to prevent an even bigger catastrophe, one that could have destroyed half of Europe, even part of our own country. If you like the video, don't forget to leave a like, and if you haven't yet, subscribe. While you listen to that reminder, I'll start the story. Enjoy watching. The Chernobyl power plant was built by the Soviet Union in the 1970s, 16 kilometers away from the city of Chernobyl near the Belarus-Ukraine border. To house the plant's workers and their families, a new city named Pripyat was built from scratch, just 3 kilometers away. The city was a typical Soviet-style settlement with many kindergartens, schools, sports halls, swimming pools, playgrounds, cafes, and even an iconic amusement park. In 1986, its population was around 49,000. On the night of April 25th, it was decided to finally conduct a long-delayed test in Reactor No. 4 of the Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant. To understand the reason for this test, we first need to know how a nuclear reactor works. In the simplest way, we can think of nuclear reactors as energy-producing factories. Radioactive isotopes, in this case uranium-235, are placed in the reactor core. As the core reacts, it produces immense heat and high levels of radiation. The heat turns water into steam, which drives turbines that generate electricity. During this process, control rods are used to regulate the output and adjust the speed of the reaction. Otherwise, we could find ourselves blown into the sky. In essence, that's how a reactor works. Let's go back to the test. The test, which was decided to be carried out that night, aimed to see whether in the event of a power outage that cut electricity to the cooling pumps, the turbines could keep spinning long enough, about 30 seconds, to supply enough power until the backup generators started. However, nothing went as expected that night. During the test, the plant operators lost control of the reactor's power. There were some errors, but I'll keep it simple. When control was lost, the core temperature rose rapidly. They tried to cool the reactor by inserting control rods and pumping water, but instead of reducing the heat, the water turned into superheated steam, leading to a massive pressure buildup and an explosion that blew a 1,000-ton roof into the air. The core was now exposed, and a massive radiation leak had occurred. 2 workers died instantly during the explosion. Soon after that, a second explosion took place when the water from the cooling pumps reacted with the metal structures of the fuel rods. Due to the large-scale fires that broke out, firefighters and other emergency crews had to be dispatched to the site. When local firefighters arrived, they were unaware that they were exposed to extremely high doses of radiation. In order not to damage the government's reputation, the authorities hid the disaster from their own people and the rest of the world. This secrecy lasted only a few days, but within weeks, almost all the workers who were there at the time had died. Thanks to the firefighters' efforts, all the fires caused by the explosion were brought under control within about 6 hours. But the danger was not over. Even days after the explosion, by early May, Reactor 4's core was still melting. The molten radioactive metal turned into lava-like material and slowly burned through the ground. Soviet officials prioritized stopping the nuclear leak. At first, they tried to cover the reactor from above, but they ignored a crucial detail. Beneath the reactor was a large pool of water, formed by both the plant's cooling water and the water used by firefighters to extinguish the flames. As the core continued to melt, it was burning through the concrete floor and moving toward this water. If the molten material reached the water, it could trigger a massive steam explosion that would destroy the entire plant, including the other 3 reactors. This would have been the catastrophe of catastrophes. The resulting explosion would have been hundreds of times more powerful than Nagasaki, around 3,000 to 5,000 kilotons of energy compared to Nagasaki's 21 kilotons. This could have meant the destruction of Ukraine, the contamination of water sources for 30 million people, and the end of life in the region for hundreds of years. The only solution was to drain the water. To do that, someone had to reach and open the drainage valves. But the valves were completely submerged in radioactive water. This was not a simple task. It was a deadly one. The crisis team gathered the workers, explaining the risks of the mission, and told them that if they died from acute radiation syndrome, which was very likely, their families would be taken care of by the state. That's when 3 men stepped forward: Alexei Anenko, Valery Bespalov, and Boris Baranov. These 3 workers volunteered to go underwater, find the valves, unlock them, drain the water, and save not just Ukraine, but possibly all of Europe and humanity itself. They were about to embark on what could only be called a suicide mission. Anenko later said, "At first I thought about refusing the mission, but I was the only one who knew exactly where the valves were. How could I say no?" Anenko and Bespalov had worked together on the construction of the safety system and knew exactly where the main pipes and valves were. The 3rd volunteer, Baranov, was responsible for operating the lighting equipment. Under normal conditions, this process would have been handled by the plant's computers automatically, but the explosion and flooding had destroyed all electronic systems, so the 3 men had to do it manually. Most of the risk came from the radioactive water itself. Within seconds of entering, their skin began to darken. They were exposed to doses exceeding 5,000 Roentgens per hour. The metallic taste of radiation filled their mouth, and their skin felt like it was being pricked by thousands of needles. They waded knee-deep through the dark, contaminated water, surrounded by pipes and valves. At one point, Baranov anxiously checked the readings on the dosimeter. Sometimes they climbed over pipes to reduce contact with the water. Eventually, they reached the valves, opened them, and drained the water. To everyone's astonishment, they completed the impossible mission in a shorter time than expected and returned to applause. This story later turned into legend. Some even claimed that the 3 died immediately after completing their task, sacrificing themselves for humanity. The willingness to sacrifice was true, but the story wasn't. Contrary to popular belief, the 3 survived. Baranov died in 2005 from a heart attack. Valery Bespalov and Alexei Anenko are still alive today. Although they suffered some radiation effects, their quick work and the water's dampening effect protected them from fatal doses. The areas most exposed to their legs developed black marks known as radioactive bronzing. Bespalov said that after the mission, even after multiple showers, their dosimeters still showed high readings whenever they measured themselves. In the end, these men did what had to be done. They saved the people of Ukraine, a significant part of our own country, and a large portion of Europe from a much greater catastrophe. By the way, the minister who once said, "Radiation doesn't affect us," died in 2011 from heart failure. Life is ironic like that. That's all from me for this week. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please remember I do all the work on this channel by myself, and I can only keep doing it thanks to your likes and comments. I'm Beatripe. See you next time. As always, until the next video, stay well.